All right, quick quiz for you. Based on this clip right here, which elemental pop pairing do you think I'm running? Now, seriously, pause the video and take your best guess, because what you're about to find out will probably change the way you see this perk forever. If you're new here, I'm going through all the perks, ammo mods, and fit upgrades, testing every single base item with all 6 augments to figure out which ones are working, what's broken, what's underrated, and also absolutely overpowered. Now, the next step on our journey is the final perk, Elemental Pop, the most misunderstood perk in the game. On the surface, it looks simple, but under the hood is one of the most complex perks I've tested yet. The cooldown mechanics, interrupt stacking, the augment synergies, they make 0 sense, and even some non-elemental augments that break this perk entirely. It's all right here. Let's get right into today's video. Now, before we get into today's perk, Elemental Pop, I have to give my regular disclaimer. Now, whenever I'm doing any sort of testing, sometimes there might be a little bit of a variance. And so I make sure that if there's anything more than like 5 or 6% or any differences, variances, I go back and retest it over and over until I cannot get the incorrect thing anymore and I can prove myself right. But also, I have to also give to this disclaimer for this video specifically. Whenever I'm doing any of these tests today, this video is specifically about Elemental Pop. In this video, I do test a lot of things when it comes to ammo mods and how they work, but that's only because of how much Elemental Pop dives deep into the ammo mods. However, I'm not specifically testing ammo mods in this video. If you're interested in seeing all of the ammo mod breakdowns just like this and how each augment works, I will be starting a whole new series for each augment for all the ammo mods and field upgrades as well. The ammo mods are going to be the very next series. So make sure that you subscribe for any of that information. So if you're looking for specific ammo mod details, there are going to be a few in here and how they work, but only enough to be able to describe exactly how Elemental Pop works in the way that I need to be able to provide enough context for this video. Trust me, if I were to dive deep into all of the ammo mods in order to get you all the information about Elemental Pop, I would probably never release this video. So let's get right to it. All right, so let's just get into base Elemental Pop first. There is so much when it comes to base Elemental Pop, and so I have to first start off with just Elemental Pop at a base. Every bullet you fire has a chance to apply a random ammo mod effect. What is that small chance? That small chance is about 5%. So a lot of today's video, I've also was able to get some great information from Gerard S0406. He is a developer. He's currently actually trying to develop a Black Ops 2 mod. So be on the lookout for that. If you guys are interested in that, make sure to join our Discord and check out and hang out with Gerard. He's a very knowledgeable. He was able to provide a lot of information that ultimately saved me a ton of time in testing. But then I was able to just go back and verify all of this stuff. So if you hate anything about what you see here, just understand a lot of this stuff Gerard ended up testing. So if there is something that you end up testing that's a little bit off, you didn't hear that I approved it. So anyway, one of the biggest things I need to first discuss is how the base perk works, because there are 2 sets of ammo mod cooldowns that I need to basically break down so that way you understand how they work here in the game. So at a base, you've got every ammo mod itself has its own ammo mod cooldown. This ammo mod cooldown is native only to the ammo mod itself. So as an example, if we don't even have on Elemental Pop, we've just got Cryo Freeze on our weapon. Once we shoot Cryo Freeze or once we shoot bullets and Cryo Freeze pops on an enemy, we've got a 2-second cooldown before Cryo Freeze has a chance to go ahead and pop again. And that's native to the weapon. Same thing goes for Napalm Burst. Once we hit Napalm Burst, we've got about 15 seconds before it can pop again. Same thing, so on and so forth, all the way up through Brain Rot, having a total of 55-second cooldown. Now that cooldown timer is based to ammo mods. Now, when we talk about Elemental Pop itself has its own cooldown. This is where things can potentially get kind of confusing for you, so stay right along with me. When it comes to Elemental Pop, it has its own cooldowns per ammo mod that randomly pops. Because it has its own cooldown, it's not a cooldown before like that specific ammo mod can pop again. It's specifically a cooldown timer added before Elemental Pop can pop again. As an example, if we have Lightning Pop from Elemental Pop, there's a 50-second cooldown before Elemental Pop can pop again. This might be confusing because before, if you have Lightning on your own personal weapon, then you have 25 seconds before Lightning can pop on your weapon again because of the ammo mod. But when it comes to Elemental Pop, it's not specifically just for Lightning. That 50 seconds is before any other ammo mod can pop from Elemental Pop. That's level 1. Let's go level 2. With level 2, this is whenever Elemental Pop procs an ammo mod randomly, that 5% chance after its cooldown, whenever it pops, it interrupts the cooldown timer for whatever ammo mod is on your weapon. So let's just say that you pop Deadwire. Now Deadwire has a 30-second cooldown, but Cryo Freeze pops like 20 seconds after Deadwire started its cooldown timer. Cryo Freeze popping from Elemental Pop will restart the Deadwire 30-second cooldown from where it was. So it's going to prolong the time before your ammo mod on your weapon can pop again. Now, base ammo mods to Elemental Pop cooldowns are just twice as long, except Elemental Pop has a minimum of 15 seconds cooldown, which is why Cryo Freeze, obviously if it was 2 times as much, it would be only 4 seconds would be the minimum. However, because of Elemental Pop's minimum of 15 seconds, Cryo Freeze has a minimum of 15 seconds before it can pop again. Elemental Pop also has a maximum as well of 80 seconds, which if Brain Rot was multiplied by 2, that would be 110 seconds. But because Elemental Pop's max is 80 seconds, Brain Rot itself has a max of 80-second cooldown before it can pop again. This is going to be extremely important because any time that Elemental Pop randomly pops, it restarts your ammo mod cooldown. Now, the next part about that I must explain is that level 3. If the ammo mod on your weapon has finished cooling down before Elemental Pop procs, then your ammo mod is now in a position of waiting for the chance to pop. So it kind of like gets a saved, it kind of gets that cooldown pop saved. So as an example, if you have Shadow Rift on your weapon and its 30-second cooldown has finalized, but maybe you're using, maybe you're using another weapon that doesn't have an ammo mod on it, but Elemental Pop is also out of its own cooldown. When you switch back over to your weapon with Shadow Rift, as soon as, let's say, Napalm Burst pops from Elemental Pop, you have Shadow Rift already cooled down. Now you just got to get some kills to get that 5% chance to proc, and it'll go ahead and proc probably sometimes immediately after. And so the cool part about that is that your ammo mod cooldown gets saved. Elemental Pop cannot interrupt the cooldown timer if the cooldown timer is done cooling down. I hope that makes all of the sense. 3 things. 1, the ammo mod and Elemental Pop has 2 separate cooldowns. 2, Elemental Pop interrupts ammo mod's cooldown. It does not interrupt the opposite way. And that's only because like Elemental Pop is the buff, so it does not make sense to have the base feature in the game nerf the buff that you get. And then level 3 is that if your ammo mod is done cooling down, now it's just waiting, and that wait is saved. So even if elemental pop procs before your ammo mod does, as long as the ammo mod was done cooling down, you're safe, you're good, and you'll get that additional proc, which is something that's going to be very necessary here shortly. Now, the next thing I need to explain about the base elemental pop is the fact that in order to identify whether it's the ammo mod popping or the elemental pop procking, you have to look for that little pink border around your screen close at the bottom to be able to tell which one is elemental pop. Elemental pops, as you know from traditional, elemental pop, when it procs, there's that pink fireworks that happen at the bottom of your screen, and that signifies whenever it's elemental pop. And so you can be able to tell which one is which and start gauging in your mind the timer and which timer is going to start cooling down for you there. Next, I also need to talk about the cooldown, because there's 3 types of cooldown here in the game. Now, when it comes to the player cooldown, there is a player specific cooldown. Now, this is what we all know as, this is when your ammo mod is procced. That ultimate cooldown before you can proc that ammo mod again. And that's what that regular cooldown timer is for that ammo mod. Then there's the global cooldown. And so this is where each ammo mod itself has a global cooldown, meaning that if it's procced by one player, if you're in multiplayer, any other player cannot proc that ammo mod. Now, historically, according to Gerard, historically, this has been 3 seconds for each one. However, Deadwire and BO6 is a 15-second global cooldown for everyone before it can proc again. However, all the rest of them are kind of unknown for Black Ops 6 Zombies. If you guys have done any kind of testing, please let me know in the comment section down below. But also the third is the entity cooldown. So the entity cooldown is the cooldown that an enemy has on being hit with that same ammo mod again. Now, this is probably about 0 seconds for most, if not all. But what are you guys' thoughts on this? Because it's kind of difficult to be able to test. I had the chance to go to Reddit, and I noticed that Severe Sync 5611, he asked about ammo mod cooldowns, and he said he can't find anywhere, but if he's playing co-op and everyone running Shadow Rift, for example, do we have a separate activation timer on the procs? With that being said, is there any reason to use elemental pop? I read in the past that the cooldowns were shared, so elemental pop is just a troll for co-op zombies. Or am I missing? Okay, so the way that this works, Severe Sync 5611, is that everything is on a global. There's also a global cooldown as well. So even when I was playing with a friend to figure this out, that global cooldown is right around that 3 seconds here in the game, where your friends cannot proc it immediately. So if everybody got the chance to cool down and they were all waiting, and then like maybe an amalgam came up and everybody shot with their Shadow Rift weapon, Shadow Rift will pop on one, but has about 3 seconds before the next person can proc Shadow Rift again. So it is still fair and it is still usable here in the game. Now, the next thing I want to test is how the ammo mods work if you have elemental pop on and an ammo mod. Now, at a base, obviously elemental pop has its random chances of proccing, but one of the biggest things I want to know is if I have an ammo mod on a weapon, does it replace certain procs from elemental pop's proccing? And the coolest thing is that I found out that it does not replace it. So I put Brain Rot, which has the longest cooldown. So these tests are with the longest cooldown, 80 seconds if Brain Rot procs from elemental pop, and 55 seconds if it pops from the ammo mod. So I decided to put Brain Rot on a weapon, and this bottom row here you can see is where elemental pop procs. This blue one right here was Frost, was Cryo Freeze, and then Dead Wire, so on and so forth. You can tell by the colors. Notice that there is no green, which symbolizes Brain Rot, in the lineup. And this is because if you're using a weapon with an ammo mod on it with base elemental pop, no augments, it removes that ammo mod from the random ammo mod rotation when you have on elemental pop in that weapon. If you switch weapons to a weapon that does not have on an ammo mod or that has a different ammo mod, then it does add that ammo mod back into the random rotation of elemental pop just while you have that weapon out. So yes, that does mean that the game's design changes based on what ammo mod you have equipped to your weapon. So sometimes there are some really weird things that happen in your game just depending on that. And this is going to be key later on. Before we continue in the video, I just had to stop by and just say, hey, if you're somebody who's looking to really develop yourself, connect with other gaming professionals, developers, publishers, designers, and other creatives, entrepreneurs, people who want to build side careers on gaming, YouTube, or whatever the case is, if you're obsessed with that kind of stuff, or if you're just serious about just living life better and improving yourself, right, growing smarter, I want to personally invite you to our Gamers Freedom Formula community. So this is much more than like a Discord or like a chat group. It is a full-blown academy and community built for gamers, creatives, entrepreneurs who want mental, creative, and financial freedom. I'm sharing the exact principles, systems, and strategies that I've used to build multiple six-figure businesses, trained 300 other entrepreneurs and creatives, and grow this entire platform. So inside this community, we're diving into real conversations, strategic coaching, growth frameworks. We've got tons of mindset development, great resources, both for mental and financial resources for you guys, so that way you can use your passions as a launch pad, not just a limitation to your life. So the link is in the description. Tap in, join our community, and let's start building something bigger. Let's get right back into the video. So what happened here is that brain rot within about an 8 round, I think this was tested in 8 rounds. Within 8 rounds of testing without brain rot on, I got about 10 pops with just elemental pop, no ammo mobs on weapons. And then in about another 8 rounds with brain rot on, there was an added ammo mod pop. So you can see here in between the first and second elemental pop, there was a brain rot proc. In between the third and fourth, there was a brain rot proc. And then another one in between 4 and 5, so on and so forth. You can see here. So this effectively almost doubled the amount of augments of ammo mods that you get just by having on one weapon with an ammo mod. And you would also think that it replaces this, but it doesn't. And if you have another ammo mod on as well, it does not replace any of these at all. It simply adds another layer to it. This is going to be key here shortly when we talk about this briefly in a little bit. So that's everything about base elemental pop that we need to know for right now. We're going to come back to talking a lot about just base elemental pop, because elemental pop by itself is kind of useless. I mean, 10 pops within 8 rounds is okay. The randomness of it is completely random. We even tested to see if there were any sort of patterns, and there were 0 patterns that we could find. The closest pattern that we could find was that maybe Shadow Rift and Napalm Burst were consistently popping near each other, but it wasn't frequent enough to where we could pinpoint anything specific. So hopefully if you felt like there was any sort of ambiguity in the fact that there might be a pattern, this is a pattern of about 30 pops. And this was consistent the 3 times that we tested the random pattern of testing. Now, before we move on from talking about base elemental pop, I must also plug in my most recent video where I dive deep into how elemental pop interrupts and interacts with the base ammo mods and how you should best use that. It also dives a little bit into Chillberry and Citrus Focus, which I'm going to dive into here shortly, but it doesn't dive into it as much. So I'm going to link that up here for you guys to watch if you have not already seen that video. All right, so up next, let's go ahead and get into our very first augment, and that's going to be Chillberry. Chillberry slightly reduces all ammo mod cooldowns. Now, this is going to be so very important because when it comes to Chillberry, it's all about which ammo mod cooldown or which cooldown is actually the one that gets cooled down. So we've learned that elemental pop has a separate cooldown timer than the ammo mod itself. Chillberry reduces the elemental pop's cooldown, not the ammo mod's cooldown. So if you're using Chillberry expecting that your weapon ammo mod will cool down more often, it won't. Now, that would be really cool because that would mean that Cryo Freeze could ultimately pop like every 1 second instead of every 2 seconds, but that's not the case here. This is going to reduce all elemental pop cooldown timers by 20%. This takes elemental pop from effectively about 2.5 to 3 pops per round to right around an average of 3 to 5 pops per round, depending on also how many weapons you have with ammo mods on them. So let's take a look at that. So if we have on regular elemental pop with an ammo mod like Brain Rot, this is how that pattern works. But once we add on Chill Berry, reducing that cooldown time, not only did we get more Brain Rot procs because we had the elemental pop cooling down faster, allowing us to be able to get more Brain Rot procs from elemental pop and the ammo mod here, but also we got a lot less time. We got 2 less rounds that it took to get 10 total elemental pop procs. And we got 1, 2, no 3, or no 2 and no 6, but we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 total pops within a 10 pop range here with having on Chillberry. This brought it to doubling the amount of elemental pop or ammo mod procs that you can get. Now, this is only so important if you're out there trying to be like an elemental god, if you're trying to be like Captain Planet and just popping all types of elements. Because once you add on another weapon with another ammo mod, and then a third weapon with another ammo mod, yeah, this is where they are the most effective. You will get the biggest bang for your buck just having on Chillberry. Chillberry by itself carries elemental pop, and you don't want to put anything on. You don't want to add any other augment that's going to reduce the amount of space or the amount of times that you ultimately can proc all of these. So the ways to get more pops is just by adding on other weapons with different ammo mods. My suggestion, you want to have on a weapon that has Brain Rot, just because Brain Rot has the longest cooldown and it gets shrunk by that. And then you also want to have on a weapon that has Cryo Freeze, because Cryo Freeze can pop so often that every time you pull out that Cryo Freeze weapon, you can Cryo Freeze another enemy. Now, something you must be aware of is the fact that because Chillberry is reducing the amount of time that it takes before the next elemental pop ammo mod procs, whatever elemental pop ammo mod pops, you want to hope is longer, because if Cryo Freeze, Napalm Burst, Cryo Freeze, Napalm Burst are popping consistently, the longer ammo mods, the longer cooldown ammo mods are going to be consistently interrupted over and over. That's why you want to have on a weapon with one of those longer ammo mods, so that way it can remove it from the rotation. By having on Brain Rot on a weapon, it will remove Brain Rot from the elemental pop rotation, meaning that it has more random chance, it has a higher random chance of a lower ammo mod popping. But that's also why you want to have on the reverse, where you have on Cryo Freeze as well. Well, when you have your Cryo Freeze weapon out, it has less chances for that really quick elemental pop ammo mod from proccing. So that way you're not consistently resetting your base ammo mods cooldown. Man, I hope listen, if you're at this point and you're not super confused just yet, hey, drop me a like, subscribe, and then comment with a star and a firework. Comment with a star and a firework that you're not confused by this point in the video. Up next, let's talk about everybody's favorite augment, and this is Citrus Focus. Now, Citrus Focus is very particular. If a weapon has an ammo mod on it, elemental pop will only activate that one. So let's just talk first off why everybody loves Citrus Focus so much and why they use it so much. So I think that most people use Citrus Focus because they want their preferred ammo mod to pop more often on the bosses that are weak to them. However, by doing that, you're separating all of the rest of the ammo mod's chances of proccing. And most people did not realize what I just taught you about how the ammo mods stack by adding on weapons with MO mods. The one thing I noticed is that Citrus Focus does not stack in the way that we want to. Like I just showed you with Chillberry, you are effectively doubling how often you get a pop just by having on Chillberry at a base. If you have Citrus Focus without Chillberry on, you are reducing the amount of procs that you can get because you are replacing elemental pop, not adding or stacking. So you will not get that 20 MO mod pops by having on Citrus Focus, but you will get an average of just about the same amount of pops with just having Citrus Focus on. You're just getting more of that predictably, versus if you have on Chillberry and you have on that MO mod for that weapon. And again, I only showed you Brain Rot. When we had on Cryo Freeze or Napalm Burst, it was triple or almost quadruple the amount. So it does you more harm to have Citrus Focus on your weapon because you're isolating the other MO mods and you're not getting as many pops overall. Where this shines is where if you have on Napalm Burst and you're on Liberty Falls, since both of those elites and the special are weak to Napalm Burst, and Napalm Burst has that lingering effect at the start of that Napalm Burst is the beginning of the cooldown timer, which means that lingering effect with those two bosses on only Liberty Falls allows you to really maximize Citrus Focus and Chillberry if you do have them on, because you will get potentially maybe 14 pops, around 14 pops, instead of the 10 when you just have on only Citrus Focus with Napalm Burst. And also because the cooldown is so small, by the time you finish one Napalm Burst, like lingering effect, about 10 to 12 seconds after that, you'll get another Napalm Burst on both of those enemies if you have it on. The downside to that is that doesn't necessarily work with the other maps or the other MO mods, because on the other maps, the enemies don't have the same exact weakness, elemental weakness. And so this is kind of where you want to maximize on Liberty Falls, but everywhere else you have to have multiple weapons. And once you add multiple weapons with multiple MO mods, when you have on Citrus Focus, you start to reduce the amount of cooldown pops that you can ultimately get with just having on elemental pop and that MO mod itself. Let's move ahead up to Vulnera Beam, which is a very simple augment. This augment slightly increases the enemy's elemental weakness damage by 15% to the base elemental damage of whatever enemy that is. This is also cool because if you've just got base elemental pop and Vulnera Beam, and you don't have like Citrus Focus on or anything like that, or you don't have on an MO mod either, if a random MO mod pops, that random MO mod does 15% extra damage to that enemy. Now, this is not specific to the enemy's elemental weakness damage. So as an example, if you pop Cryo Freeze on a Mangler, even though it's not his elemental weakness, it still does 15% increased weakness damage to him. And it's because it's doing elemental damage. Now, if you pop Napalm Burst on the Mangler, and again, this is not an MO mod, a breakdown video, but if you pop Napalm Burst on the Mangler, it will get that base 15% as well as whatever the Napalm Burst increase is, because it is his specific elemental weakness damage. Does this apply to non-bullet damage like equipment? Yes, it does, and it gets the same exact boost. So if you have Molotovs on and you throw it down at a Mangler, or you throw it down at a special or a leader or anything like that, it does do an extra 15% damage because it is an elemental weakness damage. It does it to all the enemies, everything, because it is elemental weakness damage. Same thing goes for if you have on shock sticks because of the shocking, all that stuff. So you're effectively boosting your elemental weakness damage just by having something on that can ultimately pop that effect. This is probably one of the coolest things that I was most happy to learn, which brings us next to Pineapple Blast. Now, Pineapple Blast is so very cool, but also one of the weirdest synergies in the game, actually. This made me question, why is cooldown or chance? Why are there both in the game? When it comes to Pineapple Blast, equipment can also trigger a random ammo mod. Once again, it is completely random. So that means that if you throw down a Molotov, it does not mean that it's going to automatically proc napalm burst because it's fire. It doesn't work that way. It just pops a random ammo mod. Now that chance is 5%. So because this is a 5% chance, it's also on the same exact cooldown timer as Elemental Pop. Now, what equipment counts? So when it comes to Pineapple Blast, the equipment that counts is regular damage, AoE damage, regular damage and AoE damage. Anything that does damage to an enemy that is a tactical or a lethal. Support equipment does not count for Pineapple Blast. Support equipment in this case is considered a score streak, so it's not considered equipment. Let's just say that you don't get any kills and you just want to get Elemental Pop procs with Pineapple Blast on your equipment, then it is 1 out of every 20 enemies that get affected by damage. So if you're running around, you got 20 zombies, you throw down a blast trap and all 20 of them get hit, one of them on average will pop a random ammo mod. Same thing goes for AoE damage. So like throwing down shock sticks, even though it does a few ticks of damage, the ticks of damage also counts. The worst equipment to use with Pineapple Blast is the combat axe. Now the combat axe is normally pretty strong. The reason why the combat axe does not count because the combat axe what it hits is what it kills, and it cannot hit many zombies at one time. It can probably hit like 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 zombies. And if it does hit them, that's 5 out of 20. And that's it. So because of that, you have to throw multiple of them versus only really needing to throw one concussion grenade. And that one concussion grenade concussing 20 zombies, because it is AoE. If it concusses 20 zombies, one of them are going to get an ammo mod pop, which is so cool. Concussion grenades are one of the strongest tactical equipments that you can use because it is the cheapest equipment, and also you can affect a crap ton of zombies and throw it real quick. Molotovs are a very effective tactical or lethal equipment to use because it does have the AoE. Zombies can run through it. It does consistent tick. So just throwing one down, typically you're probably gonna, if there's only 10 zombies and you get 2 ticks, that's a total of 20 ticks. So 20 interactions of damage. One of those ticks is going to effectively pop an ammo mod. So those two are a great combination. One other really cool thing is that the incantations are fire. And the best incantation is the Napalm Burst incantation. The fire incantation is the best incantation to use with Pineapple Blast. Now, if you also, we'll actually get into that here shortly. It's the best one, but you can also use the Shadow Rift one as well. The Shadow Rift one is really good too, but the Napalm Burst one, pretty much because of the AoE, because of the ticks, when you turn around and you got a horde of 50 zombies and you just knock them all down, first off, it's just really strong. Second off, it's one of the easiest incantations to get. And then also third, if you do have it and it does that, it's probably going to tick until the zombies until one of them pops. So the Napalm, the fire incantation is the strongest one. The Lightning is also the worst incantation to use with Pineapple Blast. So if you're going into Citadelle Des Mortes and you have on Pineapple Blast, just go straight and grab the fire incantation. That's just going to do you so much better. Now, equipment does not get a specific cooldown like the ammo mods do. So they just only get their own cooldown directly from Elemental Pop, and that's it. All right, so let's get into talking about Imperil Peach, because this is another one of those very weird augments. Imperil Peach, enemies that hit you have a random chance to trigger a random ammo mod. That chance is 10%. This is the highest chance of all of the rest of the chances for any of the other augments, which is super awesome because you get a lot of chances with that. However, the downside to this is that it is also based on Elemental Pop. So when it comes to Imperil Peach and how it works, the cooldown timer is based on Elemental Pop. Grabs, self-harm don't count for this. Enemies that count are all regular enemies, specials and elites, and then also projectiles. So if you've got one of those stupid flying parasites and they shoot one of those little blasts at you, they from afar can also get a random pop on them. This is also super, super awesome. Now, This works with shell augments, meaning that if you have on a shell augment like the turtle shell and they hit you, there is a chance that it pops a random ammo mob, which is super awesome. We're going to talk a lot more about that because there's some weird synergies with that one right here. Now, the reason why Pineapple Blast and Imperil Peach are so weird is because when it comes to Imperil Peach, you can't really control it, right? If you get hit by an enemy, then that elemental pop is going to reset all of the cooldowns on your weapon ammo mods. So you don't really want to have this on because it's unpredictable and it can dramatically reduce the amount of ammo mod pops that you can get based on what I showed you about just having base Chillberry. By the way, base Chillberry is just perfect by itself. You don't need to add on any other augments, just Chillberry and that's it. And it's going to give you the best effect. But Pineapple Blast is really cool because you can control when you throw the equipment. If it were me and I were looking to be like the elemental god, I would say, if anything, put Pineapple Blast on with Chillberry and just use Pineapple Blast very conservatively. And because you're gonna always have all these pops, especially if you have 2 or 3 weapons with different ammo mods on it. And Pineapple Blast won't interrupt the amount of pops that you can get from both ammo mods and elemental pop. And that brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to our final augment, but we're not done. We still got a lot more to go. Electric Cherry, a lot of you guys' favorite. So Electric Cherry, reloading creates an electric damage discharge that damages and stuns nearby enemies. The emptier the magazine, the stronger the damage. What does that mean? So first off, I want to know if there were what I call reload levels. And unfortunately, there are no, well, fortunately enough for me, there are no reload levels. But unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way that every single percentage of the reload is a different damage amount. But it's actually pretty simple. Every 1% reload does 2 damage. So as an example, if you've got 100 rounds in your weapon and you shoot 1 bullet, that means if you reload, that's a 1% reload. When you reload, you will do 2 damage. The max amount of damage that you can do is 200 damage. So in that case, if you have 100 rounds and you empty the magazine and reload from empty, you would do 200 damage to surrounding enemies. Now, because if you understand how round data goes, enemies' health passes 200 after round 2. So if you don't have elemental pop on at round 2 or round 3, you're never going to one-shot an enemy with that. And it does not scale, unfortunately. So it remains 200 max damage the entirety of the round scaling, unfortunately. The other thing to know about this is that the radius of this damage increases up to a max of 2 meters. So that means that if you reload at 50% of your magazine, the max radius is only going to be 1 meter, versus if you do from completely empty, the max radius will be 2 meters. And it scales from there. So if you only get like 1 to like 10%, you're barely going to affect any zombies at all. Sometimes a zombie is going to be right next to you if you're only reloading at 1%, right next to you, and not even get electrocuted. So you can kind of spam it. So if you reload and then you shoot a couple bullets and you reload again and you shoot a couple bullets and you reload again, you can spam it. Now that's not going to give you much damage, right? Because you're only going to potentially get maybe 2 to 10, maybe 20 damage in those times. But you do get the stun. The stun also lasts a different amount of time depending on how long or how close the zombies are to you. What I noticed is that there's a 3 to 5 second stun effect of the zombies. So if zombies are further from you, they get about 3 seconds of stun. But if they're close to you, they get about 5 seconds of stun before they're released. So it just changes based on, again, that radius, depending on how close they are to you. Now, after 4 immediate reloads, you get a cooldown before you can spam again of 5 seconds. So you cannot reload for 5 seconds if you are doing any sort of reload spam. If if that mattered to you. I know that that matters to some people. So what's considered immediate? 5 seconds. So if you reload once, and then within 5 seconds you reload again, and then within another 5 seconds you reload again, and then same thing 4 times. So ultimately, if you reload 4 times in 20 seconds, you're gonna get a 5-second cooldown timer before you can start doing that again. And then it'll give you all 4 reloads right back up. This does not change based on the magazine. So if you got a 30-round magazine, if you get all the way down to only 3 rounds, if you got 90% reload, that's gonna be 180 damage. 1 round on a magazine of 30, on a magazine of 30 rounds equals 6.6 damage. It always rounds up after 0.5. So if you're testing this in game, if you have a 30-round mag, you shoot 1 round, you reload, you end up doing 7 damage. It will always favor the higher. Now, something else you need to know is that bosses and elites need a minimum of 6 to 7 damage before they take damage. So they don't even take any damage up to that 6 to 7. Now, they also don't get stunned because it only stuns normal enemies, but they will take some of that damage. So up next, I want to talk a little bit about some of the different augment synergies, because I think that this is probably going to be one of the most important things for you to know about the game ultimately. Now, breaking down some of these synergies are going to be a little bit confusing, so I want to break it down super simple. So the first 3 synergies I want to talk about is Elemental Pop, and then having Chillberry, as I told you before, is probably the most OP at 3.16 pops on average per round, best used with ammo mods on 3 weapons. With just regular Elemental Pop, you get about 2.12, I think it's 2.125 pops for Elemental Pop per round. But when you add on Citrus Focus, it brings it down to an average of around 2 pops per round, really nothing more. And we definitely could feel the difference while we were testing this versus just having base Elemental Pop versus having Chillberry on as well. But this is going to be best used for Napalm Burst on Liberty Falls, as I explained before. If you have on Pineapple Blast, well, you won't be able to use Chillberry, but you'll still be able to get that base 2.125 pops from just having Elemental Pop on as well. And if you're controlling your Elemental pops with throwing equipment or using your incantation, then you're going to still get a ton of pops with Elemental Pop and also get pops from using a fire incantation. If you have on Picky Eater with Vulture Aid, you're also now going to get a ton of free fire incantations, and you can pick them up from around the map for free as well. It is the best augment synergy that you can use if you're on Citadelle Des Mortes to have a lot of fun and to really feel like an elemental god. Plus, like I said before, you still get a ton of those pops. But probably the weirdest thing of all is that if you have on Imperil Peach and Turtle Shell, now I put in this example Chillberry so that way you can see. If you have on a combination of all 3 of those, it is extremely overpowered because there is a hidden effect with Turtle Shell that if you get a certain amount of hits, 10% of your Imperil Peach 10% hits will allow you to get a random dead wire shock pop. I'm not sure where this came from at all. But if you do have it on, that's essentially 1% of the hits while you have on Turtle Shell and Imperil Peach and Chillberry will allow you to have a random dead wire pop that does not count towards your Emerald Mod cooldown, that does not count towards your Elemental Pop cooldown. It's effectively a free proc of dead wire. This is very overpowered for anybody who uses shell builds because you get just this extra random blast. However, the downside to using Turtle Shell and Imperil Peach right now is that the second that you load it to a game and you have that stuff on and you have Turtle Shell, Imperil Peach, Chillberry, and when dead wire pops, it breaks Elemental Pop at a base. So what happens is it stops showing you the pink border around your screen when elemental pop procs. And then it also allows elemental pop to randomly pop. I mean, randomly pop without you hitting or getting hit, shooting a zombie or anything. There will be random pop effects nearby when another MMOD is about to pop or has just popped. So I don't know how they broke this. I figure this, like this synergy where you get a random deadwire shock from having Turtle Shell and Imperil Peach on, it feels like this was something that they put in the game by design, which would make sense. Like after a certain amount of hits, you get this huge blast of retaliation. That actually makes sense, but it feels like they probably programmed this in the game and broke elemental pop's feature, because even after that, even when I would save and quit and come back in, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't change anything. So I'm not sure where this came from. If anybody knows or has tested this out as well, in our Discord, we've tested this out a bunch. It's even broken Napalm Burst and Lightman. So if you end up getting hit with Turtle Shell and Imperil Peach, and if Lightman pops and Napalm Burst pops, as well as getting those Deadwire pops as you're getting hit, now Napalm Burst starts to add as free augment pops whenever you get hit as well. So I'm not sure any other synergies, but I'd love for you guys in the community to let us know in the comments down below if you've gotten any of those sort of weird synergies happening whenever you have on some of these synergies. So I hope that this has been super effective for you guys. If you've got a wild build, you got strange synergies or creative strategies that you've tested and you want the world to be able to see, I'm opening up a new like showcase series here on the channel now that we're finally done with these perks. So we've got our Discord set up, and I want you to start dropping your best clips, best loadouts, or even just screenshots of your favorite like augment builds and how they all work, whether something's broken, brilliant, or just plain weird. I want to be able to feature your guys' creations on the channel and give the community somewhere to be able to have a spotlight to shine. There's so many of you guys with such brilliant minds, because I feel like this isn't just about what I discovered. It's about what we're all discovering together. So go down, hit our Discord link from our website. It's probably up in the top right. Hop in the Discord server, start submitting your builds and all that stuff now to us, so that way we can start showcasing all these strange strategies to the community, because you guys are out here cooking up a whole lot of really good stuff. So yeah, man, elemental pop might seem like just another perk on the surface, but once you really like understand the layers and how cooldowns interact, how the augments overlap, how even outside mechanics start affecting it, you start to realize just how deep this game actually is and how also broken it is. And honestly, this is just the beginning. Because now that we've wrapped up the full perk deep dive series, I'm about to shift gears into a whole new journey, and that's analyzing every MMOD augment in its own individual video as well, breaking down synergies and helping you to build strategies that most players probably wouldn't even think of coming up with. So again, join the Gamers Freedom Formula. This is where we grow beyond just the zombies grind, right? Mindset, strategy, freedom, financial freedom. Is all there. The link is in the description. And don't forget, if you got a build or a clip that you feel like deserves to be seen, join our Discord server, drop it there, start chatting with us. I'm starting that new community series to really just start showcasing and highlighting all the incredible creativity that y'all bring to the game. So hit the like button as well. Obviously, drop a comment. Let me know if you learned something new today. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? We're besties now. Right? We're besties now. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited about all the content coming up. And also, let me know, are any of you guys looking forward to Elden Ring's Night Reign? I'm also a Souls player. I know a lot of you guys have come in the last 6-7 months since Black Ops 6 came out, but I'm also a Souls player as well. And so I'm looking forward to making this style of content on Elden Ring. So if you're looking forward to that, let me know. Also, if you made it to the end of this video, bro, let's go. So thank you to all of you guys who are already currently subscribed, who are supporting and stuff. So thank you guys so much. With that, guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. If you've not watched my last video, just go what are you doing? Go check it out. Like it's in the description as well. But have a beautiful goddamn day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, guys.